Hello there, I'm Guildmaster Dan, and welcome to my review of the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Player's Handbook. Some of you may know that I previously did a video on my impressions of 5th Edition based upon playing in the starter set, in the starter adventure there. But I have my Player's Handbook, and I've read through it enough that I feel that I can give it a proper review and, recommend it or not recommend it. So that's what we're doing today, guys. Sorry that you're getting a late video, or at least late in the day. I was on vacation off in the middle of the woods, no technology or none of that, but came back and I wanted to give you guys my review of at least the Player's Handbook, because I do have some recommendation or some opinions on it that relate specifically to the book, and naturally with Dungeons & Dragons, to have the full set, you have to have the monster manual and the DMG. So at least my impressions of the Player's Handbook, which more or less, my review of the Player Handbook, which more or less is the review of the RPG, because they designed it this time, and this is good, that if you pick up the Player's Handbook, that is everything you need to run the game as a game master, as well as playing it as a player. That, number one, is a plus. That I'll go ahead and start there. That is a great idea. It's one step away from what I wish they would do and make a proper core rulebook instead of doing this 3-book bull crap, but at least it's a step in the right direction. They made this a little bit more complete because they included a bestiary in the back. Very good. I like that. It's not very in-depth. Kind of wanted to show it to you guys, but I think I passed it already. It's not very in-depth, but it is a bestiary, and I like that because it actually gives you stuff that you can use to run an adventure. I mean, it's a very basic set of monsters, where you have your basic animals that you might run into, some imps, a giant spider, dire wolves, skeletons, very basic set of monsters. We could have used a little more variety, in my opinion. I would have liked if they maybe would have added maybe like another 4 pages of monsters to add just a little bit more variety to it, and it would have felt more complete. Right now it's just kind of bare bones. You can make an adventure out of these, but you're definitely going to want to pick up the monster manual to have the full amount of creatures that you can throw at your players. I would have liked it if... it's set up for the 3-book thing, but at least this is something. This is a step in the right direction, and I like that it's here. They also included some things that they went a step beyond previous player handbooks, in including lore things, such as there's a nice section in the back about gods and how all the planes fit into the multiverse and how the multiverse works. They have a very large list of deities from both historical and from the different Dungeons and Dragons universes. I like that. Again, they added stuff in here to make it more, or at least closer to a core rule, to make this more complete, and I like that. In fact, I'd go as far as saying this is probably the most complete Player's Handbook that I've seen out of the Dungeons & Dragons handbooks, that you can actually run the game with this. Granted, I have run the game with just handbooks in the past, such as with 3.5. I ran it with just the Player's Handbook there, but this actually feels designed for that purpose, and that's definitely a plus for this. As for the book itself, I do have one little complaint. Complaint and praise, I'll say. The art in this book is good in some places, like great in some places, and bad in others. They went for a style similar to the Pathfinder core rulebook, and I understand that the artist has worked for Wizards of the Coast before, and that there's an argument that, you can't copy yourself. Well, you can, because the previous editions, their handbooks did not look like this. They didn't have this layout and this look to the art. Pathfinder did, however, and Pathfinder had, pretty good success there after the disappointment with 4th edition, and oh, look at that! The next D&D edition that comes out with this very Pathfinder style and very Pathfinder layout. The monsters in here and the characters in here all look very Pathfinder-y. I'm holding it a little far back for you guys to see, but Take my word for it if you don't have your copy yet. It looks very Pathfinder-y. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, a lot of the art is really good. Like, some of the character illustrations in here are really awesome. Like, there's a picture of a samurai in here that is just awesome. It's a female samurai. I dig it. The warrior picture is awesome. There's lots of, like, full-page prints that I question their necessity. Like this, the fighter picture. That's an awesome illustration of fighter. Very detailed, very cool. But at the same time, there's also something kind of funny here. Anyone who picks up this book and likes to play halflings, I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. Because I don't know what happened here, but the halflings seem to have mutated. In the back of the book, in the single appendix, there's some more sketch style that's similar to the 3.5 book. Well, here, let me go ahead and point it out to show you what I mean. See this guy in the spiderweb? That's a halfling. You know, he's smaller than a human, he's similar in proportion to a human, but, you know, he's definitely smaller. That's a halfling right there. This guy on the back of the, looks like an ogre or an orc, that is also a halfling. Now, that is the only place in the book the halflings look like that. In the rest of the book, halflings look like this mutated, warped monstrosity here. I mean, you notice how the freaking head and shoulders are way too big for those tiny legs? For some reason, all of the halflings in this predominant style in the book look really weird. They're all, like, warped, and the perspective's odd, and it's just... I just wonder what the heck happened there, because they clearly had the appropriate drawing of a halfling in the back, but I don't know. I just had to mention it. It doesn't take away from the book. It's just something I noticed while looking through it. Now, man, my wife would have killed me if I didn't mention it, because she could, she's real artsy, and she could fill up an entire video about her feelings on how the art looks in this. She put it. The art was very soft in this, and though there were details, everything was really muted. It was very impressionistic, she said. For me, I think some of the art is really good, and some of it not so much, hence the halflings. But, that's just a small thing. It has nothing to do with the system. Just something I wanted to bring up and talk about real quick. Getting to the actual system, however, getting away from just the book and talking about this edition's tweaks and such, going back to my previous video when I talked about my impressions, I still like the advantage-disadvantage system. I still think that is going in the right direction in that it encourages players who don't normally think outside the box, who try and think around a problem rather than just bashing their head through it. I like that that's there because it really seems to encourage players who don't normally do that to start thinking outside the box and, be critical thinkers and adventurers, and I like that. I still don't like healing surges. I don't like the fact that you can get all slashed up by swords and stuff and then sit down on a log and then all of a sudden, without any spells being cast or any doctoring being done, your wounds magically stitch up because you have all your hit points back. I've heard arguments that, just like AC, HP or just like armor class, hit points are more abstract and represent more like your state of health, or, I'm sorry, if you lose hit points because you got a gash across your chest from a sword, and you sit down on a log and take a breather for an hour, and you gain the hit points back that you lost from that gash of a sword, mechanically what you're saying is sitting on a log just stitched that back up. And unless you're saying that your world, your setting is so magically latent that everybody magically heals whenever they just stop and take a breather, it's bull, alright? I don't like it. It's dumb. If you're going to use it, sure, fine, I'll buy the whole abstract thing. I would just recommend, if you do use it, Make them temporary hit points. At least that makes sense. At least that, you took a breather and you're moving on, in spite of your physical wounds. You took a breather and you got your will back enough to get moving and continue doing stuff. But they're temporary hit points. You lose like 1d4 hit points each hour that you go on after resting. Something like that. Otherwise, I don't care for it. I know some people like it, but I think it's taking away the risk. I think it's taking away risk in the game, and I don't care for it. Which actually brings me to something else, another negative I found in the system, something I didn't care for. Now, I should note that just because I don't care for it, it doesn't work for my style, doesn't mean it doesn't work mechanically. This system is pretty well thought out. It definitely looks, everything's pretty solid. The game will run smoothly. But there seems to be a trend in this book that I also saw in the Numenera book. It's the same complaint. There seems to be a trend in these newer versions or these newer RPGs, at least from the bigger companies or the bigger designers, where they're putting more power and less risk into the game, where they're making it easier for player characters to survive the day and wade through armies of enemies, a la Dynasty Warrior. Whereas it's taking away the risk from the game. For example, the races in this, there's no real detractor to playing a race. There's no real negatives. There's no ability penalties, but there are all positive penalties. Every race has some advantage to playing that race, but there's no disadvantage to playing that race. They have no difficulties. You just have a baseline, and they're all good and special in different ways, but none of them have any problems or difficulties. So, well, that's kind of dumb. Part of what's interesting about playing a different race, about playing something that's not human, is finding out what their problems are and role-playing out those problems. Role-playing out something that's different from just average. Instead of everyone's a special snowflake in a different way. I don't like that. I also don't like that they have it set up where if you roll, at least how it's described in the book, you roll a 20 in an attack, you get a critical. You roll a 1, you just miss. There's no fumbles. There's no, you roll a 1, you have a chance of screwing up and accidentally hitting one of your comrades or hitting yourself. Legitimately screwing up. There is a trend in the book, as well as in other more recent RPGs, where they are taking risk out of the game. And I don't like that, because if there's no risk in a game, then there's no reason to do what you're doing. There's no consequences. If you take risk out, there's no consequences to your actions. Therefore, it doesn't matter what actions you take. And I don't like that. That's not fun. That's getting away. I mean, part of it is role-playing in a world. And in our world, there's things called consequences. And when you take consequences out of the world, it becomes kind of boring. But, that's going a little far. I was a little bit of a tirade. It's not quite that far. It's just a trend I noticed in things where it seemed like they were leaning towards giving people bonuses instead of having people deal with difficulties, such as penalties or disadvantages. And I don't like that. People have disadvantages. Not everybody's good at everything. Everybody's bad at something. I don't like that they're taking away the bad and emphasizing the good, because it feels too video gamey, and I don't like that. Role-playing is for role-playing. It is tabletop gaming. It is completely different from video games. It is completely different from board games. It is its own thing. I don't like this pressure to cater to players not liking losing their characters. Risk is part of it. Risk is what makes it fun when you do something dangerous and stupid and it works. But that's all I'll say about that. I don't care for that that I don't care for that trend. I don't care for that trend. It's not all the way there, and it's just a trend that I noticed. I don't care for it. Moving on from there, I'm going to say something positive now because I just went on a tirade. I really like that in this one, there's a lot of customization. 5th edition is probably the also most customizable from the get-go you can make your players. I really like systems where you can really cater-make your character. You can make... Your character will always be different from other characters because you made them. Point-buy systems like Mutants and Masterminds or the Hero system, those are awesome because you can make whatever character you want, and every character that you make will always be different from other people's characters because you made them. This isn't quite there yet, but it's very close. It has the most customization I've seen in Dungeons & Dragons yet. Where, I mean, in the base rules. With races, you have sub-races. With the main race and the sub-races, each of them have different little tweaks to how that race plays. With classes, you have class-like specializations, and each specialization tweaks how that class runs and how it plays. And for both of those, it tweaks how your background's going to be set up, because there's lore attached to, each of those little tweaks. And then on top of that, they added backgrounds, which are essentially, they're like little archetypes you can lay on top of, the character that you made, which gives you proficiencies in certain skills or tools. And it comes with a series of charts that you can roll on, which informs you about what your past was like. It's similar to a life path system, like in Cyberpunk or Mechton, where you roll to see, what your life was like up until when you started adventuring, when you actually take over the character. It's not quite there yet, but this really, it's a step in the right direction. And it really helps. It will be really helpful for players that have a hard time coming up with their background or have a hard time thinking up ways to make their character unique. This customization and those little additions will be very handy, and I like having them there. There's also a trinket chart on there that you can use, similar to like in Numenera, where you start out with a random oddity. It has one of those in here called trinkets. I like that too. There's just all this extra stuff that helps you come up with background stuff for your character. Now, granted, you could always make your character feel very specialized and different from other characters. But before, it was more on the player. You had to really come up with a unique personality and a unique background, and really, take the good with the bad. When if you want to be a swashbuckler, you can use rapiers and stuff as a fighter, and choose to wear leather and really go after that swashbuckler field. But you had to go with it. You had to live with wearing leather armor and using a sword that doesn't do as much damage as a greatsword. You can do that. You could be a barbarian, or you could be a swashbuckler, or you could be a samurai. But you had to. It was more on the player, where you had to make the system work and role play it out. Which this helps with that, because this adds rules and tweaks to help players do that who either aren't very good at coming up with those tweaks themselves, or they need just a little extra help. It's very nice. I like how customizable it is. It's definitely a step in the right direction. I love the fact that they did that. Let's see. I'm checking my list of all the stuff I wrote down. I still don't see THAC0 in there. I remember hearing that during the development that you were going to be able to use THAC0 if you wanted, like in 2nd edition or 1st edition, but it doesn't. It's not here yet. I didn't see it in here. I'm imagining that if they are going to have it, it's going to be in the DMG, and it's pretty much going to determine whether or not I get the DMG, because right now, if you would run the game with this, and even though the DMG will have additional charts and stuff to help, dungeon masters come up with stuff, and all those same charts are in the previous editions, which you can get cheaper. So it's really going to depend on if they add all those different options in there of how to make, each DM's 5th edition game. if they add that stuff in there, then maybe it's worth picking up. The Monster Manual I definitely recommend picking up, just because it'll add the variety to the bestiary that's in the back of this. The DMG, it's going to depend. I'm going to have to wait to pick it up in Barnes & Noble to see if it's really worth getting. But otherwise, like I said, this is probably the most complete player's handbook I've seen in Dungeons & Dragons. And the good definitely outweighs my complaints about it. I would definitely recommend this to any Dungeons & Dragons player, or even to people who are just getting into RPGs. Since this is brand new and new books will be coming out with it, there's going to be a lot of support around this. So I definitely recommend this if you don't have it yet. Ooh, excuse me. It's a good book, it's a good system, it's fun, and it's also designed in a way that it's really easy for dungeon masters out there who have like little nitpicks like me, who don't necessarily like who maybe don't like a rule or one mechanic. It's real easy in this game to just cut that, and the game runs completely fine, without it. It seems very modular in how it was designed, in that, each like set of mechanics or whatnot are self-contained, and you can just cut ones that you don't like, and it's very adjustable. It's very moddable, and I like that. For example, just a real quick example beyond, I don't want to go back to the healing surges thing. So, take Rangers in here, for example. In here, they have Rangers having Ranger spells again. I've never cared for that. I like my Rangers being just, woodsmen. They don't have magic. But it's real easy to cut that out of the class in here, because in here, the whole spellcasting thing is actually, it's just a class feature that they pick up at a certain level. And even if you remove that spellcasting feature so that they don't have access to those spells, the Ranger's still a really well-rounded class without it. And that's just an example of how, there might be little mechanics in here you disagree with, but they're real easy to cut out, and you still have a fully functional system without them. Actually, I mentioned that. I don't think I touched on feats. Real quick, before we finish up. Feats in this, they changed them from the previous editions. Now they're optional. First of all, you get them less often if your DM chooses to use them. About every 4 levels, a character will get the ability to raise one of their stat points by 1, which, if you have that, but it doesn't matter. You can choose, if your DM allows feats, to forego raising up one of your stats to pick up a feat. And, you still have to meet all the prerequisites of any feat you want to take, but now feats are a little bit rarer about when you have them, so you need to pick and choose which ones you want to use even more, and you won't get as much feat stacking as you did in previous editions, and I like that. I like that they're rare now, and I like that they're optional now. I think that is definitely an improvement, because they were broken in previous editions, and this one, it definitely seems like they put a little bit more thought into it, and I like that. So in general, my final thoughts are, pick this up if you don't have it yet. It's definitely worth it. Like I said, this has got to be the most complete Dungeons & Dragons handbook, our player's handbook yet. I think that they need to go a little bit step further and, just make a core rule book instead of doing the 3-book stuff, but this is still really good. Very, very worth the money. I highly recommend it. Pick it up. In the meantime, if you wanted my opinion on something that I didn't bring up, or if you disagreed with something I had to say, please feel free to leave a comment below. Please discuss and share your views and experiences on this. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can keep the conversation going. And as always, thank you for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.